It was the spring of 2020. Streets were silent, schools were empty, and an eerie stillness hung over nearly every town in the United Kingdom. The world had shut down. During those first months of lockdown, everyone was isolated, cut off from the familiar rhythm of life. But for some, that isolation didn't just bring loneliness. It brought something far darker. In the quiet coastal community of Saltdean, East Sussex, a 16-year-old boy named Owen Harding lived with his mother, Stella. To most people who knew him, Owen was just like any other teenager. Smart, creative, and full of energy. He loved drawing, playing guitar, and spending time outdoors, especially near the cliffs overlooking the English Channel. He was close with his friends and had a girlfriend who lived hundreds of miles away in York. They met before the lockdown, and as travel restrictions grew tighter, the distance between them became unbearable. The world was already on pause, and for Owen, that separation felt like an invisible wall closing in. Throughout March, like millions of others, Owen was struggling with the monotony of lockdown life. Days blurred together. Conversations were shorter, tempers shorter still. His mother recalled that he seemed quiet, not unhappy, but restless, like he was carrying something heavy that he couldn't put into words. Then, on the evening of March 26th, everything changed. It began like any ordinary evening. The sun was beginning to dip, casting an orange glow over the coastal hills. Stella remembered hearing Owen in his room, music playing softly in the background. Then, a disagreement. Nothing unusual, just the kind of argument that happens between a parent and a teenager who's had enough of being stuck inside. But this time, the tone was different. Something in the air shifted. After the argument, Owen left the house. No jacket, no bag, not even his wallet, just his phone in his pocket. He stepped out the door and never came back. At first, Stella didn't panic. She thought he needed to cool off, maybe walk to the beach for some fresh air. But when the hours began to pass and the sun disappeared behind the horizon, the uneasy silence in the house grew deafening. She called his phone, no answer. Sent messages, no reply. By 10 p.m., worry had turned to fear. His phone had gone offline at around 6:23 p.m., and no one had seen or heard from him since. The next morning, police were notified, and the search for Owen Harding began. At first, the search focused around Saltdean, the small seaside town where Owen lived. Officers walked the streets, knocked on doors, and asked neighbors if they'd seen a tall teenage boy with dark hair and a slim build. Some thought they might have caught a glimpse of him earlier that evening, heading down the road toward the cliffs, but no one could be sure. There were no clear witnesses, no solid leads. Then police obtained CCTV footage from around the neighborhood, and what they found would become the last confirmed sighting of Owen Harding. At approximately 6:50 p.m., cameras captured a figure resembling Owen walking along a street called Banningsvale. The footage was grainy and distant, but investigators believed it was him. The direction he was walking led toward the cliffs overlooking the sea. From there, the trail went cold. Search teams combed the area. Helicopters scanned the coastline with infrared cameras. The Coast Guard conducted sea searches, while local volunteers scoured footpaths and fields. Despite the efforts, not a single trace of Owen was found. No clothing, no footprints, no belongings. Days passed, then weeks, and the world outside continued to remain locked indoors, watching this story unfold on screens and in newspapers. Who was Owen Harding? And how could someone vanish so completely in such a small, quiet place? To understand the mystery, we have to step back to the weeks before his disappearance. Friends say Owen had been struggling emotionally during lockdown. He missed his girlfriend deeply. They spoke almost every day, and at times he expressed frustration about being unable to see her. One friend later told police that Owen had once mentioned wanting to walk all the way to York to see her, a journey of nearly 250 miles. It sounded impossible, maybe even a joke, but it would later become one of the theories investigators couldn't ignore. There were no clear signs that Owen intended to run away, though. He hadn't packed a bag or made any social media posts suggesting a plan. His relationship with his mother, while occasionally tense, was loving. By all accounts, he was a happy, grounded teenager, not someone preparing to disappear. Yet the evidence pointed to something deliberate. He walked out of the house and kept going straight toward the cliffs. The cliffs at Salt Dean are breathtaking, towering white chalk walls overlooking the vast expanse of the English Channel. Locals often walk the paths there at sunset. It's peaceful, serene, but also dangerous. The police feared the worst. If Owen had reached the area and something happened near the edge, the tides could have swept away any trace in minutes. But there were problems with that theory. For one, the timestamps didn't align neatly. His phone went offline at 6:23 p.m., yet CCTV placed him at Banningsvale at 6:50 p.m., nearly half an hour later. How could that be? Did his phone die? Or was it turned off intentionally? That single question became the heart of the mystery. The community of Salt Dean responded. Hundreds of volunteers, friends, neighbors, even strangers, joined socially distanced searches. Posters with Owen's photo appeared on lampposts, bus stops, and shop windows. The phrase "Find Owen Harding" spread across social media. But as days turned to weeks, hope began to fade. Police followed every possible lead. They checked train stations, bus routes, and motorway cameras. They investigated reports of possible sightings, but each one eventually went nowhere. There was no sign of a boy walking north toward York, no activity on his bank account, no further digital footprint. It was as though Owen had stepped into the night and simply ceased to exist. By the end of April, official searches began to wind down, but Stella refused to give up. She continued organizing her own searches, walking the coastal paths every evening. Friends said she would sit near the cliffs at sunset, staring out at the horizon, whispering her son's name. The media coverage grew quieter, but the mystery remained. How could a 16-year-old vanish so completely in a place so small, with so many eyes watching? Some believed Owen had fallen from the cliffs accidentally. Others wondered if he had chosen to disappear, perhaps overwhelmed, lost in his thoughts, needing an escape from the pressure of lockdown life. But to those who knew him, that didn't make sense. Owen was planning for the future. He talked about seeing his girlfriend again, going back to school, even traveling once restrictions lifted. He wasn't someone who wanted to disappear, not long-term. The search for answers has continued for years. Despite new technology, sonar scans of the coastline, and renewed public appeals, there have been no confirmed discoveries. His body has never been found. His phone has never been recovered. And no new evidence has ever surfaced to explain what really happened that evening in March 2020. For Stella, every anniversary is a painful reminder of that night. She has said in interviews that not knowing is the hardest part, that even the worst truth would be easier than endless uncertainty. "I wake up every morning hoping for a call, a clue, anything," she once said. But every day ends the same, with silence. Today, Owen Harding's disappearance remains one of the most haunting, unsolved cases of the COVID-19 lockdown period. His story became a symbol of how isolation, emotional distance, and a single argument can ripple into tragedy. Perhaps Owen simply needed space to clear his mind, to find peace by the sea. Maybe he intended to come home. Maybe he never got the chance. Whatever the truth is, it's still out there, hidden somewhere between the fading light of that March evening and the roaring waves below the cliffs of Salt Dean. Sometimes the smallest conversation can change everything. And for Owen Harding's family, one hope remains constant, that someday someone will come forward and the silence will finally end. 52-year-old Mark Kinson had been missing for months, and despite a released CCTV image, investigators and family members remain troubled by one question. How could there be so little security footage of his final movements? Residents of Cardiff, Wales, have been urged to review any home or business recordings from January 31st, 2025, the night Mark disappeared, in hopes that a camera somewhere captured what police have not yet found. One of the few confirmed details in Mark's case is his presence on Uphill Road at approximately 9:45 p.m. That location is close to his parents' home, though it remains unclear whether he intended to visit them. According to his wife, Angela, the couple lived a quiet, stable life. She acknowledges that Mark occasionally struggled with mental health challenges, but insists his disappearance is completely out of character. She continues to hope that he will be found safe. Based on the initial investigation, police believe that after Mark was seen on Uphill Road, he likely turned onto Cleveland Road and may have walked toward Captain's Walk and Bronte Crescent. The timeline becomes less certain from there. A significant point of interest surfaced when CCTV footage from a Texaco gas station near Cypress Drive in St. Mellons revealed a man closely resembling Mark walking along the opposite side of the street. The footage was reviewed by his friends and family, who, while not fully certain, believed the man could have been him. A local resident also reported seeing a man who he believed to be Mark that same night. Another image released by investigators shows a white transit van. Police say the vehicle was seen on Fishpond Road around midnight, the same night Mark vanished. Anyone who occupied the van that evening has been asked to come forward. For Angela, the lack of progress has been agonizing. She believes someone in the community may know what happened to her husband, and she has issued repeated public appeals for information. She emphasizes that Mark was deeply devoted to her and to their children, and would never willingly remain out of contact for this long. Compounding her frustration is the delay in receiving the gas station footage. The recording was not provided to investigators until months later, long after additional footage had been automatically erased. Angela believes that if the material had been submitted promptly, Mark might have been located. Equally troubling to her is that, despite assurances, police have not yet conducted thorough searches of the areas where Mark was last seen. In response, she has taken matters into her own hands, distributing flyers throughout the community and in Castleton. Awareness of the case has now spread as far as Scotland, offering a glimmer of hope that the right person might still come forward. Authorities urge anyone who may have seen Mark, or who has information about his possible whereabouts, to contact 101 or reach out anonymously to Crime Stoppers at 0800-555-111. It's May 30th, 2024, in the quiet suburb of Warnup near Bowler, Australia. Renee King, a 42-year-old woman, leaves her home around 1:25 p.m., carrying her black cat, Shadow, in a carrier. This seemingly ordinary departure marked the beginning of a 2-month-long mystery that gripped the community. Renee had been living in temporary accommodation after becoming homeless. Her sudden disappearance raised immediate concerns among her family and authorities, especially given the freezing temperatures that winter. In a bid to gather leads, police released CCTV footage from June 2nd, capturing Renee at a residence in the nearby town of Lucas. The footage shows her ringing the doorbell at 6 a.m., shivering in the cold, and requesting clothing and water from the homeowner. She is seen putting on a second jumper over her clothes before leaving with 2 bottles of water. Despite extensive searches and public appeals, weeks passed with no sign of Renee. Her bank accounts remained untouched, heightening fears for her safety. Then, on July 30th, a breakthrough. Renee was located safe and well in Ballarat. The details surrounding her disappearance and discovery remain a mystery, as full information was never released to the public. But Renee's return was a huge relief to friends and family, who must have feared the worst. 24-year-old Natanis Merasty had always been close to her family. She called often, she checked in constantly, and whenever she traveled, she stayed connected. So when days passed without a single message from her, her family didn't just worry, they panicked, because disappearing like this simply wasn't who she was. Natanis had been missing since early May of 2025, and as the hours passed with no contact, her family's fears grew heavier. On May 9th, they alerted the RCMP, and when investigators realized that her last confirmed location was Edmonton, the case was transferred to the Edmonton Police Service. Immediately, they knew something was wrong. This wasn't a young woman who vanished because she wanted space. This was someone who never cuts off contact unless something is seriously, dangerously wrong. However, the mystery began when Natanis left her hometown of Lorrin Whitehead, Saskatchewan, and drove toward Edmonton, where she planned to visit friends. She was driving her black 2007 Hyundai Tucson with Saskatchewan plates, a car her family instantly recognized. Throughout Alberta, British Columbia, and Saskatchewan, search teams scoured highways, parks, and rural roads. Helicopters flew overhead. Volunteers walked mile after mile through forests and fields. But there was no sign of Natanis. What investigators did find, however, was a timeline captured by a trail of security cameras. And that timeline is where the case becomes truly disturbing. On May 5th, CCTV footage placed both Natanis and her vehicle at the Continental Inn in Edmonton. She remained there until 1:22 a.m., when she was seen exiting the building with two unidentified women. But there was one detail that chilled investigators. Natanis appeared to be crying. Her face was red, her head was down, and she looked distressed, as if something had happened inside the building that left her shaken. These two women, who have never been identified, walk beside her. And then Natanis disappears into the night. From the hotel, she drove to a 7-Eleven located at 107th Avenue and 156th Street. Security cameras captured her SUV pulling in. She stayed for a short time. At 2:55 a.m., she left the parking lot. This is the very last confirmed sighting of Natanis herself. What happened after this moment becomes even more troubling, because after she leaves the 7-11, her SUV keeps moving, but she does not. Investigators tracked her vehicle as it traveled across provinces. Not once, not twice, but for days. After leaving Edmonton, the vehicle headed east toward Sherwood Park. Then it continued through smaller communities, Buck Lake, Nordegg, before eventually reaching the area of Lake Louise, nearly 300 miles away. Her family says she would never have made this trip willingly. She had no plans there, and no reason to vanish that far from Edmonton. Someone else was likely driving.
We want her home. She is loved. She did not deserve this. Family who dearly misses her want her home.
The search for Natanis Merasty has been on for more than 2 months. The 24-year-old member of Peter Ballantine First Nation was reported missing from her home in Saskatchewan, with the last confirmed sighting of her in West Edmonton on May 5th, first at the Continental Inn and then a nearby 7-Eleven. She hasn't been seen since, but police traced the movements of her vehicle, traveling west to BC and onto a ferry to Nanaimo, then returning to the Edmonton area, continuing to Lloydminster and into Saskatchewan. The car was found abandoned and repainted silver in James Smith Cree Nation. That was on May 15th.
The next day, the SUV was recorded passing through British Columbia. Then, on May 7th, it boarded a ferry bound for Vancouver Island. Someone had driven her vehicle through multiple provinces, boarded a ferry, and traveled for hours across the water, with no sign of Natanis anywhere. 3 days later, the SUV left the island and was driven back toward Edmonton. Then, on May 12th, it was spotted west of Lloydminster, near the Saskatchewan-Alberta border. Hours later, it vanished. The vehicle was eventually recovered on the James Smith Cree Nation in Saskatchewan. But when officers found it, something was disturbingly wrong. The SUV had been spray-painted silver. Whoever was driving it didn't just abandon it, they tried to disguise it. Inside, there was no sign of Natanis. The vehicle was seized and is still undergoing forensic analysis. A crucial piece of evidence remains the surveillance images from the Continental Inn. In these frames, Natanis stands beside two women. One appears to hold her arm, and Natanis looks upset, wiping tears from her face. Investigators have publicly pleaded for these two women to come forward. So far, they haven't, and no one has identified them. Who were they? Friends? Witnesses? Or something far more troubling? Until they speak, one of the most important parts of the timeline remains incomplete. For Natanis' family, each day that passes without answers feels heavier than the last. They say she would never disappear like this. Not voluntarily, not silently, and the fact that her vehicle traveled hundreds of miles while she vanished from view raises terrifying questions. Someone knows what happened, someone saw something, and someone may have been driving that SUV for nearly a week. Anyone with information, no matter how small it seems, is urged to contact the Edmonton Police Service at 780-423-4567. Even the smallest detail could help investigators understand what happened between the early hours of May 15th and the moment her SUV was found, disguised and abandoned. Until then, the disappearance of Natanis Merasty remains one of the most unsettling missing persons cases of 2025, a mystery stretched across thousands of miles, captured on camera, yet still without answers. Maria Glikina was a 19-year-old activist living in Nizhny Novgorod, Russia. On the 8th of November 2014, Maria had planned to meet up with her friend, Irina, at her house on Timoraziva Street. Now, it is unclear where Maria exactly was before she left to meet up with Irina. Her friend Irina claims that Maria was waiting for her boyfriend, Nikita, with whom she was supposed to visit Irina. However, police reports claim that Maria was waiting for a few friends, but decided not to wait for them and headed toward Irina's place alone. At 10 p.m., Maria called Irina and told her that she was on her way to her house. At 10:20 p.m., Maria called her again to let her know that she was on Menina Street. When Irina asked her how she was planning on getting to her house, Maria said that she was walking on foot. According to Irina, she wasn't worried that Maria was walking alone at night, as she thought Maria was with Nikita and that they were walking together to her house. But that was not the case. Maria was walking alone, and Irina's house was about 3.2 kilometers from Menina Street. It would have taken her roughly 40 minutes on foot. Maria then texted Irina at around 11:02 p.m., telling her that she had reached Belinskiego Street and would arrive in 10 to 15 minutes. But she never did. After 20 minutes had gone by and Maria still hadn't arrived, Irina called her cell phone. Maria picked up the call and said, "Sorry, I can't talk to you. I'll call you back later," and hung up the phone. Irina said Maria sounded out of breath and in a hurry. Concerned, Irina called Maria again at around 11:22 p.m. Maria picked up the call and told her that she was not coming. This would be the last time anyone heard from Maria. 15 minutes later, Irina tried calling her again, but her phone was switched off. It is unclear when Maria was reported missing, but what is clear is that the police did not launch a search for her immediately. A search was eventually conducted by a few volunteers on November 9th, and it was these volunteers who would find her body the next day. The police only started searching on November 10th. On November 10th, the volunteers found Maria's body in a basement of an abandoned building, just a few blocks from Belinskiego Street. Maria was found tied up and in an embryo position, with her arms stretched out. She was found naked from the waist down, and her clothes appeared to be missing, except for a scarf and a sweater which were found on the body. It is believed the killer took her clothes with him. An autopsy revealed she had been severely beaten and raped. Her cause of death was determined to be asphyxiation, although no strangulation marks were found on her neck. Police at first theorized that she had been hit by a car and that the driver had dumped her body in the basement, but this theory did not explain why her hands and feet were tied up. After the autopsy results, this theory was dropped. The police checked surveillance cameras in the surrounding area, and what they found was chilling. At 11:05 p.m., just after Maria had texted Irina to let her know that she had reached Belinskiego Street, she was captured on CCTV at the intersection of Maxim Gorky Street and Alexievsky Street. This means Maria lied about her location in the text, as she could not have been at Belinskiego Street at 11:02 p.m. if she was at the intersection at 11:05 p.m. In the CCTV footage, Maria can be seen walking at the intersection. Just 30 seconds later, an unknown man can be seen following her. The man has not been identified, and it is believed this man tortured, raped, and killed Maria. Something else to note is that the location where Maria's body was found is just 300 meters, or a 4-minute walk, from the intersection where she was captured on CCTV. However, Irina had called her at 11:22 p.m., and Maria told her that she wasn't coming. This begs the question, where was Maria between the 11:05 p.m. CCTV sighting and the 11:22 p.m. call? The volunteers do not believe she was killed in the abandoned building, as the house is not entirely isolated. Residents living next to the building did not report hearing anything suspicious that night. Moreover, many homeless people and a pack of dogs take shelter in the building. Someone would have certainly heard something. It is believed Maria was kidnapped sometime after her CCTV sighting. Many have theorized that Maria was probably with her killer when Irina called her at 11:22 p.m. and was threatened by the killer to tell Irina that she wasn't coming, in order not to attract attention. Maria was then most likely taken someplace else, where she was raped, beaten, and murdered. The killer then probably dumped her body in the abandoned building later. Supporting this theory is the fact that Maria's parents had her phone checked by someone who worked in law enforcement, and they found out that Maria's phone was moving very fast after her CCTV sighting, suggesting that she was in a car. Strangely, a man similar in appearance to the one seen on the CCTV footage was seen the following morning on November 9th at 7 a.m. on another CCTV camera. It is widely speculated that the man had just dumped the body in the abandoned basement. However, the man wasn't carrying anything with him at the time. Notably, Maria's missing clothes cannot be seen with him in the footage, and it is unclear if it is the same man who followed her. The police have interviewed more than 500 people, but no one has been charged. They have released a sketch of the supposed killer, but so far he has not been identified. The police have no suspects in the case. There have been no updates, and with little media coverage, the case remains unsolved. Anastasia Sotnikova was a 22-year-old woman living with her parents in Moscow, Russia. On the 31st of January 2011, Anastasia left her home for her German language course. She would not return home that night. She did not have her own car and used the subway to get to her classes. Her father was supposed to pick her up from the subway exit, but he was a little late. He waited at the subway station for a few minutes and tried calling her, but she didn't pick up the phone. Her family waited for her for 12 hours, hoping she would come back home. But when it became clear something was terribly wrong, they reported her missing. The police at first did not take the case seriously and told the parents that she was probably partying somewhere and would come back soon. Her family, however, was adamant that Anastasia never went to parties without telling anyone. It would take the police 3 days before they started looking into the case. A search for the missing woman was launched, and missing person flyers were distributed throughout the city. The police also decided to check the CCTV cameras in the subway. The CCTV captured Anastasia exiting the subway train. After her exit, she was seen taking the escalator and then passing through the turnstile, when a man of Slavic appearance, who was talking on the phone, followed her. The police tried to identify the man through cell phone records, but it was found that no calls of that length were made in that area at the time. It is believed the man was pretending to be on the phone. Anastasia left the subway station around 1:07 p.m., and she has not been seen since. The man on the phone has also never been identified. A witness later came forward and reported that she had seen Anastasia being forced into a car by a man. Anastasia's cell phone last pinged on Warsaw Highway. At the time of her disappearance, Anastasia was 5 feet 7 inches and was wearing a brown fur coat, a red scarf, black jeans, and black suede flat boots. There have been no updates in the case since, and Anastasia remains missing to this day. It's February 8, 2013, in the quaint town of Bannockburn, Victoria, in Australia. Lorrin Whitehead, a 42-year-old mother of 5, enters the local Woolworths store around 4:55 p.m., grabs a bottle of water, a pen, and a card, and then vanishes into thin air. CCTV footage captures her final moments in the store, but what happened next has baffled everyone for over a decade. Witnesses reported seeing Lorrin getting into a red Ford 4WD shortly after her supermarket visit, a vehicle she had owned. That same mysterious vehicle was spotted near her home over the following weekend and became a focal point of the investigation, with authorities desperately wanting to speak with the driver. Fast forward to recent times, and the case has taken some intriguing turns. In late 2024, detectives, armed with fresh intelligence, descended upon Shelford bushland, about 20 kilometers from Bannockburn, searching for clues. They even drained a farm dam, hoping to uncover evidence. Unfortunately, the search yielded no significant findings. As of now, the case remains unsolved, but the dedication to finding answers for Lorrin's family continues. Authorities urge anyone with information to come forward, hoping to bring closure to this enduring mystery.